Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well, I hope you're keeping safe, and of course I hope you're keeping sane. In this series, which probably won't turn out to be a series because I'm absolutely awful at maintaining a series here on YouTube, I'm going to look at different gambling fallacies. And by that I mean myths and legends and rumours and little things that gamblers believe which by and large turn out to be absolute nonsense. Now of course there are some fallacies, some of these things that people believe which actually do have an element of basis in truth. And today I want to talk about possibly the most common one, possibly the one you hear about the most, and the one that you convinced yourself so many times. And that is when you're gambling on something such as a slot game or roulette or craps or whatever, that something is somehow due. Now, in case for some miracle you have managed to avoid this term and this terminology throughout the time you've been gambling, let me just give you a very quick summary. If you were betting red and black, or red or black indeed, on roulette, and you were betting on red and maybe black had come in 4 or 5 times on the bounce, then you might think, well, red is due. It must come in red very soon because it's come in black so many times. In the same way, if you're playing a slot game and you haven't had a bonus for several hundred spins, you might think, well, the bonus is due. And you can apply this to almost any random gambling game, and you can apply this to almost any way of playing. If you're playing sections on a roulette wheel, you might be back in the tiers section, and you might believe that tiers is due because it hasn't come in time after time. Now, whilst there are going to be a small number of people who believe this, and I know one who can't actually grasp the fact that each spin of a roulette wheel is completely independent in the same way that a random spin on a slot game is independent from the last, the vast majority of us know that this idea of something being due is fundamentally flawed. It's absolutely nonsense. It is indeed, as the title of this great video will suggest, a fallacy. So why do we buy into these things? Why do we believe them? And what is the problem with these fallacies? And what makes them actually, in reality, quite so dangerous? And the reason that we buy into these fallacies, the reason that we buy into these, these ideas that something can be due, is because it gives us a pass. It allows us to behave in a certain way, in an irrational way, and to maintain our gambling where otherwise we may not be able to justify it. If, for example, you are a recreational gambler, you are someone who gambles for a little bit of fun and you don't have a problem, you set your budget and you stick to your budget. You put 20 quid on a roulette wheel. You bet £5 reds and it comes in black 4 times on the bounce. So you lost your £20 budget. If you're a recreational gambler, if you're someone who gambles for fun, what will you do? Well, you'll walk away and you go, that was rubbish. Maybe next time. And you'd walk away. If you are a gambler by nature, particularly if you are an addicted gambler, you will believe and you'll buy into the idea that somehow black is due. And this is particularly important and particularly dangerous if you're trying to apply some sort of system, a martingale system or a sort of a modified martingale system where you're increasing your bet or switching your bet every time you lose. You get into the routine of believing that something is indeed due. And this justifies you continuing, where realistically maybe you've already spent as much as you feel you should spend or that you know that you can afford. It justifies you persevering. I'm, for my sins, pretty good at maths. I understand how random games work. But when I used to play the slots online, I used to play, for you slot players out there, one of my favourite games was Book of Dead, which, as we know, but bonuses fairly infrequently. Now, I think, well, I'll have a couple of hundred spins on whatever stake I was playing, and you have a couple of hundred spins and you don't get the bonus. So realistically, I've already done what I said I would do. I'd already spent my pre-planned budget. I'd already reached the limit to which I was going to gamble on this particular game. But now I convinced myself that it was due, that by giving it another 100 spins, the bonus was somehow more likely to come in. Now, I knew that this was absolute garbage. I knew that this was nonsense. I knew that every spin is independent and random from each other. Now, there are exceptions to this, which we'll come on to later. But with a random slot game, I knew there was no more chance of me getting a bonus in the next 200 spins as I did in the previous 200. But by buying into this fallacy, by believing that something is due, believing that I was more likely, because it hadn't given a bonus already, it was more likely to give a bonus in the next couple of hundred spins. I could justify having those extra spins. I could justify redepositing. I could justify going through, the limit that I'd already set myself, or the level to which I was willing to gamble that I'd already set myself, because, well, surely now the odds are now more on my side. If I convince myself that I'm playing at plus EV, I'm basically playing a game that's at some point in the near future going to return some of my money, then I'd be foolish not to continue, wouldn't I? I'd be foolish not to stick with it. In the same way that if you're betting red or black on roulette and it's come in the opposite colour so many times, you feel you can justify breaking your budget. You feel like you can justify continuing your gambling session because you feel that you're owed the money. And owed is a very, very dangerous word when it comes to gambling. Not only are you justifying effectively going beyond the budget you set, or the level to which you're willing to gamble, or the amount of spins you originally said you were going to have, by convincing yourself that something is due, you are justifying the most dangerous thing to a gambling addict. You are justifying using flawed logic, using fallacy, chasing your losses. Every time that you convince yourself that a game is due, consciously or subconsciously, you are justifying the continuation of gambling. You're justifying chasing your losses. But rather than doing it in an obvious way where you go, well, I want to go and win that money back, which ultimately is what we're telling ourselves. We want to try and win that money back that we've just lost. We're using what we believe to be applied logic. Well, it's come in red 5 times. It's got to come in black next time. I'll just put some more money on because I'm going to get something back. When it does come in black, I want to get some of my money back. And like I say, if you apply this dodgy fallacy, this logic, this mentality of something being due, and you apply it then to some element of martingale system where you're desperate to get your money back, and so you're increasing your stake every time, you have a real recipe for disaster. So we know, and if you don't know already, okay, if you're playing a random game, each spin is independent from the last. If you toss a coin and it comes in heads, it's still 50-50 whether it comes in heads next time. It can come in heads 12 times on the bounce. It's still just as likely to come in heads next time as tails. We know this. And the reason that we buy into these fallacies is because they enable us to do the thing that we want to do, and that is to gamble. And if we can apply logic to it, we can then try and gamble and chase our losses with a clear conscience using bad logic. So is this always the case? Is this always a fallacy? Is it never the case that something is more likely to be due? There are 2 occasions where this might be the case. A percentage-controlled game such as a pub fruit machine. A pub fruit machine which is percentage-controlled can be due, in the sense as at certain times in the cycle, depending on previous play and depending on previous deposits and withdrawals effectively, so money gone in, money come out, depending on where it is in the cycle, there is a possibility that the machine is running below percentage and therefore will need to pay out at some time in order to make that percentage up. So it can, in essence, be due. And this is why people such as myself, many years ago, used to play these machines for profit, because it was easy to, well, not easy, but you were able to analyse them, where they were in the cycle and whether they were due. I would still strongly recommend avoiding them because you're playing incredibly low RTPs, and there's now technology in these machines which make it a lot harder to establish whether they're due. Any game that's got a diminishing odds. So those weird, normally for charity, those pull ticket things you get in pubs where there's guaranteed to be X amount of winners in the stack of tickets in there. Of course, if none of the winners come out, providing they're not lying on the front of the machine, yes, maybe it's become increasingly due. It's more likely, once a load of losing tickets have come out, that a winning ticket is likely to be drawn. Again, like the fruit machines, I would strongly recommend avoiding these games because the RTPs are very low. Plus, they give so much of it to charity, so therefore the RTP is even lower. So yes, there are some games that are due, but by and large, if you are playing roulette, if you're playing a slot online, if you're tossing a coin, if you're playing craps, and you're telling yourself that after a number of losses, or after a particular period of one result or the other, that something is due, then you're either misguided, in which case take this as a notification that they are random, Or, like I was doing so many times when I was chasing those slots, I was using flawed logic, I was using gambling fallacy to justify chasing a loss. I was using it to continue gambling. When the logical part of my brain, the sensible part of my brain, even during the gambling fog, even when I was playing and in the zone, I knew that what I was doing was illogical. But I used it as a way to justify my addiction, to justify continuing beyond the point where I knew that sensibly I should have stopped. Let me know of any other gambling fallacies you want me to cover. I've got a couple in line, and obviously keep an eye out for those videos soon. Thanks to everyone who tuned into the live stream the other night. It was only a test. I never actually intended really for anyone to join, but I will be doing more live streams soon. So subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, and that should then tell you when I go live if you want to pop along and say hello or ask any questions or anything. But for now, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys.